Hello, good evening.
Greetings.
Welcome to everybody watching on Facebook Live to our Barrie Innisfil Black Lives Matter Town Hall event this evening. Before we begin, I'd like to do customary land acknowledgements. In keeping with Indigenous protocol and building respectful relationships between Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples in Canada, it's customary to acknowledge the traditional territories and ancestral lands of Indigenous peoples. I'd like to acknowledge this sacred land on which we are hosting our Barrie Innisfil Town Hall tonight. This land has been the site for human activity for 15,000 years. This land is the ancestral land of the Huron-Wendat and the Anishinaabe Nation. The treaty that was signed for this particular parcel of land is collectively referred to as the Williams Treaty. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture. We also recognize the enduring presence of Indigenous peoples on this land and are committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect. And before I introduce our panelists tonight, I'd like to do a big shout out to 4 community organizers here in Barrie and Innisfil: Cassandra Amanyangole, Alicia Gotskowski, Angela Bratton, and Taylor Newman. Without the hard work of these 4, we wouldn't have had 3 successful Black Lives Matters rallies here in Barrie and Innisfil, and we probably wouldn't have been having this event tonight. So big thank you to Cassandra, Alicia, Angela, and Taylor for all of their hard work behind the scenes, bringing these events forward this summer. I'd like to welcome Laura May Lindo. Hi, Laura.
Hello.
Laura May is the NPP for Kitchener Centre. She is the official opposition critic for the Anti-Racism and Citizenship and Immigration. Ms. Lindo is the chair of the official opposition's first Black Caucus to collaborate with Black communities and allies to address systemic anti-Black racism in Ontario. Welcome, Laura May.
Thank you for having me.
I'd like to welcome Claudine Cousins. Hi, Claudine.
Hi.
Claudine is a Barrie resident. She is the CEO of Empower Simcoe. She teaches part-time in the School of Business at Georgian College. Ms. Cousins has a bachelor's degree in business management, a master's of arts degree in leadership, and is currently in year 2 of her PhD in healthcare administration. Thank you for joining us tonight, Claudine. Michael Minns. Hi, Michael.
Greetings.
Michael is a Barrie resident. He is a married father of 4 now grown children. He's a carpenter and owner of Lin Mink Woodworks. Mr. Ming studied at University of Quebec, at Trois-Rivières, at Queen's University in music and philosophy. Thanks for joining us tonight, Michael.
Thanks for having me.
And finally, Shelley Skinner. And I'm so glad to have Shelley joining us tonight to do the co-hosting and helping guide us through this discussion. So thanks for joining us tonight, Shelley. You know, Shelley is an activist, a change maker, a community builder, and founder of Uplift Black North, and a co-founder of Making Change Across Simcoe County. Shelley is the recipient of the 2020 Barrie Chamber of Commerce Women's in Business Women of the Year Heart and Soul Award, and was recognized as one of Barrie's notable women who have made an impact in our community by Barrie 360 in 2019. So glad to have you tonight, Shelley. Hey, we had a conversation a couple of weeks ago, the 4 of us.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here.
I'm glad you had to have you. We had a conversation about the four of us about how things might have changed from when some of us were younger. And to me, it seemed like perhaps there has been some change, but maybe not. I thought I'd maybe start with Michael. Michael, how have things changed from when you were a kid to how things now are for you and your children?
I would say that roughly nothing has changed. And I just measure that from my childhood with what my parents told me, not told me, that what they modeled, what they lived. And then my oldest children, my oldest son is 31. And he told me quite clearly that he'd rather be a foreigner in a foreign land than to live in Canada. So he lives in the Netherlands, permanent resident, speaks the language, going to buy a house in Harlem. No, I mean, nothing's changed. I mean, that's what renders one cynical. And
Mhm.
so how I deal with it is I just focus on my children, my nieces, my nephew. My nephew lives in Fort Riviera, where I lived 30 years ago, and he was working in a shop. He's working in a shop, at a telephone shop, and only a few people going at the same time. This lady starts yelling obscenities at him, and he was very upset. Another customer actually called the lady out, but my nephew didn't know what to say, and I called him and I told him, it's unfortunate, but you better find whatever armor you need to deal with this, because this is your life.
Yeah.
And there's no bomb louder than silence of a jovial man, and you are a jovial man. Remember that. So you find what you need to have to get through and make this world your own, because there'll be no help. Anyways, that's the end of my little spiel.
But you know what? Can I jump in too? I don't know.
Yeah.
Of course, absolutely, Laura.
Yeah.
It's interesting because sometimes I think that I agree. The experiences, for instance, in school haven't changed. But one of the things that I think may be different is the way that we parent. Like I talk to my kids. I have 3 kids, single mommy with 3 little people. I've had, I actually just this afternoon was laughing with one of my middle daughter. She's in an enrichment program, and the first project that they're going to do is unpack the legacy of John A. Macdonald on this land and what he has done in terms of instituting racism into law. Right, so she's going to learn that. I grew up in school where I did French immersion out in Scarborough, and our history textbooks translated Indigenous people as sauvage. I grew up thinking that sauvage was actually the word. Didn't even think to translate, right? But my kid is different. Like what my daughter is saying is different. But part of what I think is happening is that I'm having different conversations with her. Mark, that could also be a generational thing. Like my parents are from Jamaica. They came here. They're busy trying to build something better for their kids. I'm born here and I'm rabble rousing within the system because I'm not coming in from the same starting point as them, perhaps.
Yeah.
But I find it fascinating when I think about the conversations. Like I learned about racism that my parents experienced in passing. Right? It was me listening to them talking about it. They wouldn't necessarily talk to me about it.
Right. Exactly.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. So Laura, that's really interesting, your comments around school, because the system that is our school system is supposed to be for all people. The system is to educate and inform and help provide us with knowledge in order for us to make good decisions and move forward and contribute to society.
Yeah.
However, what I have experienced in my time in school, I've been in this country since I was in grade 3. So it's been forever and a day. And now my children who are in school and throughout their high school, elementary, it was on me to educate my child or inform them about my history or our history, and to say to them, you're working on a project, you need to work on a project on about a Black person or about your history, because what was happening in school is the history, which is written by whoever is, telling the story, was never us, because we weren't even allowed to own a pencil. If we were lucky, we could own a pencil. We couldn't write. We couldn't do the things that could help carry that history along. And that's why the oral history is so strong within our culture, because there's so much that was taken away. When we look at our school system, and things have changed. I am not saying things haven't changed. I do agree with you. Things have changed, but it's incrementally. It's at a caterpillar pace.
Yes.
So So it's really difficult for me to say to my daughter who's 18 that, you know, you're going to school and you're learning what you need to learn about all people. You're learning about what we have contributed as a Black culture to the country in terms of science, music, art, all of those things, community development. Those aren't written down in books for us and taught in the school. The curriculum is exclusionary, and we continue to see that. Recently, in Toronto, the Toronto District School Board, the largest board in the country, that had agreed to an Afrocentric curriculum, has now said they don't have the capacity to put that online. So once again, we are being pushed into a corner or pushed aside and being told, if you want to learn that, you got to learn it on your own or teach your own child. So, you know, we can't continue to say that there's been progress when there hasn't been meaningful progress.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
And honestly, it's yeah, I completely agree. And it's kind of at that point, you know, my kids are 11 and 13 right now, and you know, this is a very similar conversation that I'm having. So we're talking generations of just saying the same things to our children, to, you know, read everything with a grain of salt, come home and I'll tell you the real truth about what actually happened, right? Or you know, or question everything, like question your teacher, you know, stand up for yourself, but only so much so that you can advocate for yourself, but not so much that you're going to constantly catch the attention, you know. So we're constantly trying to, yeah, exactly. So we're always like teeter-tottering on what works for our children, so that they can be taken seriously, so that they can have a good education, have the same access as everyone else, and know that there are role models for them, right? Like, you know, that's one of the biggest hindrances, is the to actual progress and success through our Black community and with our Black youth, is there's nobody even in the schools, like I know in Simcoe County, that even look like them. You know, not even as the teachers, right? So it's like, you know, this constant, like, you know, why do I feel like, you know, only time I ever see myself is on television, and it's me being, you know, getting arrested, or, you know, or it's me being online, it's Black people online being murdered. You know, like that's the only, yeah, that's the only way. And, you know, but there is a slow progress, and the progress, I personally believe, has been in the last 2-3 years max, where you've seen a steadier climb than ever before, when it comes to representation, when it comes to people kind of questioning, especially in the education you know, level. People are like, maybe we should teach a little bit more of this. Some teachers are starting to finally be like, I'm going to add this in, I'm going to take a special interest in knowing more about this. You see this steady climb, but it's not enough. It's not enough.
Shelley, can I ask? I think we were discussing this earlier about an overhaul of the curriculum to address Black history. Do we think that that's needed? Is that a good idea? Is there a better solution to address some of these concerns?
Yeah, well, we have to have Black history, period. In the
Shelley,
schools to start there.
Started.
And you know, it's not, you know, it's not just you know, February. Yeah. Yeah. You know, like, you know, it needs to be in all the schools. I know. Yeah, it's exactly why we're here. You know, it has to be ingrained in all subjects, you know, not just the history of the subject of history. You know, it's in the contributions, exactly like what you said, Claudine, right? Like, you know, how we've contributed to the land, even here locally in Simcoe County. And, you know, because I know that I came here with no knowledge that there was any history of Black people in Simcoe County. I grew up in GTA, only ever knowing that, you know, this is where white people went, you know, so I didn't even know the history until this year. That really got to, you know, I started to learn a little bit about the Oro African Church, but I had the opportunity to spend, you know, a few blissful days with Janie Cooper Wilson, who is a goddess. And she was able to show me around about like the history and like what it is to be Black in Simcoe County. And I feel so proud, and I feel like this is why, for some reasons, like my ancestors were calling me to this area, because when I came here, like I was scared to come to Barrie. I was scared to be here as a Black queer woman. And all of a sudden, like, you know, this year I've felt like I've belonged, because I've learned who I am and who this, you know, who we were to Simcoe County, and how what an integral part we were to the beginnings of this community. And it's just it's a thing that every student should know. It should be part of the teachings. As if you're a student in Simcoe County, that should be part of, you know, your school trips, and it should be visiting these sites and having these conversations, about the injustices faced by Black people from the time they were brought here. Right?
I think a big part. Sorry, I think a big part of the challenge in education is that it's being left historically, it's left to an individual teacher to make a choice to include something different in their curriculum. That's not systemic change.
That's absolutely right, Laura.
The other day, not the other day, a couple months back, I read through the Education Act, right? Like, I am now a member of provincial parliament. My background's in education. I used to teach in teachers college, and like inevitably, the students, primarily white, because that's a whole other kettle of fish, but they would say to me, I don't see color. I don't see color. And I would say to them, that is not even true, right? And we would spend loads of time talking about it. But the courses that I taught around equity, inclusion, doing the anti-racism work were always the very last class that they took in a 2-year degree. So they did a load of practicum in the school where they practiced their skills, but knowing how to do anti-racism work was not a skill required to become an educator. So system issue number one.
Yes.
Then jump ahead. I'm a member of provincial parliament. I'm watching all of this nonsense happening in Peel. You're watching it explode again in the Toronto District School Board, in the York School Board. I'm out here in Waterloo Region, same kind of things happening here. It's literally all over the place. So I thought, well, let me go to the Education Act. The Education Act has no accountability mechanism. It doesn't even talk about racism. It says build inclusion and teach diversity. What is teach diversity? That's like there's a bunch of different people in a room, diversity taught. Like, I want anti-racism taught in schools. I want them to understand what white supremacy looks like on the ground. I want us to stop being scared and think that that means we're calling everybody racist. I want them to say there's history of a certain way that these systems function, and it's actually the way that the system was created. And so for me, in order for us to move any faster, we have to hold people accountable. And what I'm being told, because I'm a member of provincial parliament, is that you do that through legislation. So show me the legislation. We
Absolutely,
need
Laura.
Yep.
I absolutely agree with you. The systemic inequities that has created the system is huge, and the accountability from those who are the lawmakers, the decision makers, and they definitely don't look like you and me, are the ones that have to be held accountable for systems that are in place that are disguised as inclusive. The word that they throw around because they've inserted a paragraph around inclusion and diversity that is just window washing or putting your finger in a hole and plugging it and hoping the whole thing doesn't sort of collapse in on you. So without the systemic change, without this recognition that it's not about, the put in one textbook in a school. It's not about that. It's about how do you integrate a change in mindset amongst a system that has perpetually pushed Black people and the knowledge and the experience and the expertise and the things that build our young people up under the table and pretend that it doesn't happen.
Yep.
Then there won't be any change. No,
absolutely. And we also have the situation of the diversity within the actual teachers and min staff as well, right? Like, where are the legislation and the requirements to be more diverse in staff and
In
staffing
recruitment,
and recruitment, yeah.
right?
And
So-
and then we sit there and we talk about how they they find ways to, when you get to high school, to tell our Black, children that they shouldn't take these subjects and they shouldn't do this. So they stream them right out of education, right? Of actually being educators. Yeah. And so it's
Absolutely.
like, why, this is why we're struggling to find people from the Black community to be educators, right? It's because you stream them into these technical courses that that didn't allow them to enter into these systems and help to change the education system, right? From being involved right in the board.
Shelley, there's nothing wrong with technical courses. It's not a matter of streaming them into a technical course, because when you have a trade or you have technical expertise, you have these things that can carry around and do things. You have a skill. It's a skill.
Absolutely.
So
yes. Absolutely.
What happens is the sort of insidious thing that happens when it's almost like, that's not for you.
Yes,
that's for someone else. And I have a prime example. When I was in high school, I grew up in Brampton, and I went to the guidance counselor, because back in those days, guidance counselor, I took some help with choosing my, after high school, university, college, whatever. And I was told, people like you don't go to university. You may not even go to college. You got to get out and get a job. And it's those conversations that are happening with our children that we're not party to, or we know is happening, that creates this, I'm not good enough. I can only do certain things, and prevent our young people from striving and excelling. So that is something that is in the system, that has been created by the system.
Hey, Michael, have you had these kind of conversations with your kids too?
Well, I was listening to everybody, and no, not directly. I mean, I can tell you, but my mother's side of the family was from a village called Shrewsbury, which is between, it's just west of Blenheim. And so on the other side is Chatham, where John Brown went and he rallied his troops, and things didn't pan out. And then they kind of panned out, but not as he'd hoped. And so on my mother's side, I mean, the one literally fought in the Civil War on the Union side, got a different name when he demobilized, came to Canada, used the money from the Union Army, $17 a month, to petition the town of Blenheim to have a school and a church built. These buildings still exist. People come up from the south and they visit them. So as a little boy, I was there every summer, every 3-day weekend, and I hated it. But I was very lucky, I realize now, to see that. I saw the minister at the church. He was from Reverend Tatsu. His family was in prison during the war, and they were told to get off the train anywhere east of the Rockies. He married a girl from Shrewsbury. Everybody in the village, no matter what they looked like, they were Black. I was told. Didn't matter. Uncle Frank, anyway. So, and my father came from Barbados, right? So what's prouder than a baby? I don't know. So,
Maybe a Jamaican.
A Jamaican.
Maybe.
Maybe a Jamaican.
On a good day. So
Every day.
And then we fight. So then
this isn't where you thought this conversation was going, did you?
No, that's not a hill you want to climb.
No. So I grew up with that dichotomy, for lack of a better term, right? My children, I met my children's mother in Port-au-Vieux. So I was learning French, I was living that whole dream. So I always noticed a similarity between Quebec and Shrewsbury, right? Shrewsbury was literally a little village everybody was black, surrounded by everybody else. So I didn't have those conversations because I was at the time focused on learning French and being in that language. So, but now when I see my children, they grow up, all of their friends were black. I couldn't believe it. All of them. Yeah. In Ottawa, in Barrie, in Angus, everywhere. So in their mind somehow, and they used to ask me, why didn't you ever talk to us about this or that and the other thing? And I said, I was too busy trying to hustle, man, make a living, keep it going.
Yep. That's
but,
correct. That is so correct.
They picked up on a lot of things and just you being yourself. But you know, the math teacher warned me about my son's problems in math and how he wasn't doing his work and he's going to have challenges if he didn't pursue this, that, and the other thing. And I asked, well, so how is he doing? Well, we had a pop quiz and only 6 of the kids passed out of 26. I asked, well, how did Victor do? He got perfect. Why am I here? Right? And so I told Victor, I did tell Victor, I said, look, here's some facts. You're smart, you're a great defender in soccer, and you've got dreads. And whether you like it or not, people are not going to make that leap to the fact that you're an intelligent young man. Right?
Yes.
But you know you are. I know you are. Enjoy your life.
Yeah. Don't let's start on hair.
No, but no,
I know.
yeah.
A whole other conversation,
No, but I don't know if I'm trying. I don't know if this point is being made well. But my point is you're modeling your behavior.
It
right?
is.
And you know, I did tell them later on. You know, I don't see. You know, you're only as black as you're told you are, right? Because you're you. You are you, and you have your history. You have your family. You have your story, right? But what these other people are alluding to are neither your story nor your history. It's the narrative that they've seen on ABC or NBC or whatever. But it's not you. It's not you. So there's always I grew up with a very clear vision of what a black village was because I went there all the time. My father made it very clear. You know, he paid us to read. He made it very clear what your priorities were, right? And but he was a high school principal. You know, when he did his teaching thing at where was it? At Richmond Hill, not Richmond Hill, Forest Hill, some suburb of Toronto, and the principal made him arrive in the dark and leave in the dark. Right? So, and I didn't know that. He didn't tell me that. It's when he died. A friend told me that. Right? So you hold on, you shield your children because you want what's best for them.
Yeah.
Right? The fatigue comes when they're grown and you realize that you're muttering about the same things that your parents muttered about.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So I find now that my children, you know, but before the idea was to have a seat at the table, to be seen as an equal, and everything's going to be okay. If I just get that next degree, if I just get this, then there's no way anybody can say anything until you finally realize, you know, I think I'll just build my own table, invite my own people, and together we will do what we can do. And that's what I see my children doing, right? And that's where I'm at.
Amen.
Shelley, you had a great story about your kids going to school.
So, when they came here to Barrie?
Yeah.
That's
If you want to share, you don't have to share.
Your son.
No. Well, my son and my daughter have had very different experiences. My son was, actually started off in preschool, and he was, like a favorite of the preschool. They were very, very kind, very, very good to him. Where he actually started to struggle was when he got into the public school setting, and for the first year it was fine. He was hesitant, but he did okay. But as he got older, we went from this child who loved to learn and loved school and loved like the teachers, and he was a hugger, and he's just that kid that runs around and loves everybody, to just started to really withdraw within himself. And and he just, all of a sudden I would be getting all these calls about him getting into trouble and doing things that he would never ever do at home. You always know, your kids, right? You just kind of know, okay, yeah, I know that he's never going to pick up after himself. Okay. I know that I'm going to always chase him. And so if the teacher calls and says, we're constantly chasing him, picking up after him, so I'm going to be like, yeah, that's my son. But the things they were saying that he was doing was so out of character for him. And when I come home, he'd be like, no, Mom, they won't even listen. They won't even let me speak, and then it just became less and less fun for him. And, what we want our children to enjoy learning. That's how they continue continue to learn. Right. And it, to have that sucked out of you, for such a young age, it was just, all right. It was just, it was kind of sad to see. My daughter was different because she's very, very light. And so when she went to school, they didn't know she was Black at first, not until I came to pick her up, and when I did, the way they started to treat her almost instantly was different. To the point where she would come home and cry. My daughter, exactly, like she's right still, a straight A student. To this day, she's always been really, really, committed to educate her education. And it was the same, when she was at this particular school that I had to pull her out of. But they would call me frantically to tell me that one time she forgot to put her underwear on when she was getting dressed, and when she was trying to change for gym, to her gym clothes, she didn't have underwear on. And they called me into the office, and shamed me and my daughter. And I was just so taken back that had happened, for something so innocent. Like, she was in grade 1, mommy throws the clothes on the bed. I've got to take the other kid, get him dressed. And, so I see her with all her clothes on. I think she's dressed, and we go out the door. Right. It's just, it's just common sense that it was a mistake, but we were shamed. For that experience. And it really, it changed her. It changed her, that experience. And these are the things that, it just, you just get so tired of being sick and tired. And I think that I kind of wanted to ask Laura that question, because I have had a very, very small stint of trying to get into politics, locally in the municipal politics here. And it wasn't during COVID. It wasn't during this movement that's happening right now. Aren't you tired? How do you continue?
I'm tired.
Yeah, pardon?
I'm tired.
Yeah.
I'm exhausted. And in fact, I tell people on social media how tired I am, because why should I hide it? It is exhausting to have to prove to everybody that an experience that is racist was racist, right? Because everybody is quick to say, no, that's not about race.
Yeah. Oh, they're not like that.
Right? Like the shaming of the parent, whereas that some other parent would be, they would ask if they have spare clothes. They would just fix the problem. You wouldn't get a phone call and be told to come into the school. You wouldn't have to do that. But for our kids and for our families, we know that it's inevitable.
Constantly advocating, constantly. I used to think that with the degrees, etc., that would give me some form of, clout,
a
pass, and anything that didn't.
Yeah.
And it doesn't.
No.
It doesn't. Sometimes, just for kicks, I get frustrated with being called into offices, and then I make everybody call me doctor, and I offer them equity training, sometimes just for fun, but they never take it up, right? I actually had a similar situation. So my 2 older kids are very fair. And so unless you have met a Black person, you can tell they're Black. But if you have not hung out with Black folks, everybody assumed they were white. Then me too. I would show up at school. They would be all confused. I'd be asked if I'm the nanny. All these things would happen, right? So one day, one of my kids, also in grade 1, which is interesting, right? Because that's like such a formative age, right? Where you are going to love school or something can happen that can turn you right off. And we had for Christmas in my family, my tradition is we watch Malcolm X. We've always done it. That is our Christmas movie. It's very exciting. We watch it every year. We learn more, we talk more, all of that stuff.
Yeah, I love
And
that.
so that particular year, we had watched Malcolm X. We had watched Rosa Parks as well. And so jump ahead, school is back on. The teacher has them sitting on the carpet for carpet time, and they're all saying what they did over the weekend or over the holidays. And, you know, so-and-so went, I don't know, skiing or something. I can't afford skiing, so we didn't go skiing. The, you know, kid went skiing, or this person went sledding, or this person did whatever. And my daughter says, I watched Malcolm X, and was about to explain why they loved that that's what they did. And the teacher shut it down. They said, we only preach love here. We cannot talk about that. This is not conversation. Called me. I got called. I was like, what is happening? So my daughter came home. She didn't say a word because kids hold it, right? Like we talk about that if parents are getting divorced, that kids will often think the divorce is their fault. So you've got to sort of watch for that, right?
Yeah.
She didn't say anything, but started to was quieter, right? Was less enthusiastic about picking out the clothes or, you know, and one day I was putting her to bed and she's crying. And I said, like, what happened? She's not that kid to just sort of cry for no reason. And she told me the story, and she said that she couldn't understand why the teacher didn't like her. Like, that's how she heard that.
Yes.
Right? That shutting down was,
That's how I would have heard it. Mm-hmm.
Right? You don't like me as a person. And she said, this, like what Malcolm X did for Black people was really good. And I wanted to share that. And she told me that I wasn't allowed to share that. Like, and she takes it on like it's her fault. So I then called, was proactive in the calling, made everybody call me doctor, went to this meeting with them, and they were mad at me. The teacher came into the meeting, was like, you know, this is not what you're supposed to be teaching your kids. But guess what? If the school won't teach our children about history,
our lives,
our lived experiences and all of that stuff, the good, the bad, and the ugly, then that's my job. And if they need help to learn how to cope with that, then I'm offering my services, as I have in all sorts of different capacities, to have this conversation. But that's the reason I tell you that story is because, again, we as parents have story after story after story of things like this. And sometimes, depending on where we are at and what is happening in our own experiences, we haven't yet seen it as racist. Right? Like we've seen it as it's troublesome, it's bothersome. That's the piece that's exhausting to me. When you sit down and you have to you have to just come to terms with the fact that that was racist and it was leveled at my child. And now I have to fight in this system too, because I'm busy fighting in healthcare, and I'm busy fighting at my work, and I'm busy fighting at the fighting.
That is well said. That is well said, you know, because we, even ourselves, we make excuse for the behavior that's being inflicted on us because we don't want to be that person, right? So we do that. And you know, my daughter here in Barrie went for a job interview and was told that she wasn't going to touch the hair, but I had to go there.
Can't wait.
That if she had normal hair, then she would be able to get the job. Now, you know, I start to see all kinds of red, right? So I am on the phone. I'm with my daughter saying, would you like me to contact the Human Rights Tribunal? Like, that's where I was going, because this is the 21st century. We do not have to put up with this, because pushing that rock up the hill is just about crushing us. And when your child, she shut down, same thing. Silent. And I'm going, how did it go? You know, did you do good? We practiced. How was it? silence, not a word.
Mhm.
So I knew something was wrong. And it had to be something that was so bad that it actually impacted her, because normally kids are resilient. They bounce things off.
Yeah.
They bounce it off. So for her to go silent, I knew something was going on. And it's one of the things that does make us tired, and tired of being tired, and tired of having to educate and inform and still perform and still carry the load, and all of those pieces. It continues, it eats away to the point where sometimes you just sort of say, it's not even worth it, just don't even bother.
Yeah.
Right? And it's something that this new wave of Black Lives Matter has sort of made us reflect and say, you know what, it does matter. And I'm not being silent anymore. I am vocalizing what's happening, and I'm giving it a word. I'm naming it, because it needs to change. So we're doing it, we're putting it out there, and we're pushing back our elbows and putting them up and say, we need space within our communities too. We're not trying to take over. We're trying to ask for more. We want space within the community as well. We want to be included and part of this community, because we are part of this community.
Yeah.
One of the things I want to talk about a little bit, because you did mention the hair, so it reminds me well, I'm in this kind of my own like personal journey of love, of self-love, and one of the things that really frustrate me when we talk about education is how we still have segregation in an industry, and it's somewhat still okay. The hair industry. We still have black and white salons. Like people, like I just like 2 years ago went to a salon and somebody looked at me and was like, "I'm sorry, honey, we don't do ethnic hair." And it's like my ethnicity is not an aesthetic. It's not like acrylics versus gel nails. Do you know what I mean? I'm sorry, we only do acrylics. We don't do gel nails. I'm a human being. I'm somebody who's coming in looking for a service. You are the one who's been educated by the only education that's like our Ontario education system here for hairstylists. It's the only thing that's offered, right? It's all that in order for you to be a hairstylist, you have to take this course. And the funny thing is that itself is rooted in so much racism, and so much incredible racism, even to the way that that stylists talk about our hair, right? Oh, your hair's so frizzy, and you know what I mean? They're like, oh, like even touching your hair, like, oh, what's that product in your hair? Like, there's the beauty industry is a billions of dollar industry with products for all kinds of people, but somehow the same that a product that I put in my hair versus a product that you put in your hair is there's a difference, because my hair is something gross about it, right? And I have been around so many stylists who have literally like talked to people with ethnic hair as they're touching their hair. They're like, like, oh yeah, I don't know what to do with this, and it's just like, these are the people who are being educated by the only hairstyling program that we have in Ontario. And they have no idea how to deal with ethnic hair. Talk about that systematic racism.
Let us talk about that. I have, let us go there. Pardon me. So 2 things come to mind. One, I grew up in Scarborough, and one of my friends when I was in school, he was a family friend. So his older brother was friends with my older brother. So the families knew each other, whatever, right? So he ended up becoming a hairstylist for like models and stuff. He always wanted to get into the fashion industry. So when he went to hair school, because he knew he wanted to do runway model hair, he was like, I need to be able to do hair for all the people.
Yep.
So he opted to take this super curly hair. That's what they used to call it at the time, the super curly. So that was but not everybody had to do it. He did it because
it was an elective.
An elective.
A whole culture of people is an elective.
Yes. It doesn't make any sense. But then when ridiculous. You think and you reflect on the way that beauty has been raced, the way that product is raced, right?
Oh, for sure.
You look at how do they talk about frizzy hair? Like everything is to defrizz, but then they call our hair frizzy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I was
for sure.
at something, I don't know what, I was off into a tangent. I go into tangents, as you can probably tell. And I said something, blah, 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 my dreadlocks, blah, 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 blah. And a person in the audience came and pulled me aside. I love our people, right? Because we are good to each other. So she came up to me and she said, listen, I know that you love our people. And so I want you to recognize the history of calling your hair dreadlocks, not locks, but dreadlocks. Where does that come from?
Yes.
The notion of dread, the dreadful hair, blah, 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 blah. So I've been actively trying to retrain myself because, again, it's one of those internalized things. I thought I was calling it dreadlocks. And the fact I was even talking about my hair was adding some other dimension to the conversation, right? And she had to gently remind me of more internalized racism when it comes to the ways, the beauty myths around us.
Yeah.
Then I'm going to jump ahead to one day being at Queen's Park, sitting in the chamber, and back pre-COVID when people could come and visit. So I was doing, I don't even think I was speaking. I was just sitting at my table, right, at my desk. And the thing went into recess, and so the speaker calls recess. I walk outside, and this two women, like an older woman and her daughter or so, right, came running after me in the hallway, and they said, "We were looking down, and we saw you there with your locks, and just felt so proud."
Yeah. Yes.
Just because I was sitting there, I was sitting there, and then I realized then every
a representation, right?
it's important. It's important. And I think it's a combo of it's representation, seeing yourself there authentically, like
Authentically, not trying to be
not
more.
Yes. And then to bring
in all of your blackness and not and that's not to say anything about we are a culture of people who love to change our hair, and I love the versatility of our culture. I love braids, and there's so much history in that. So but it's just the idea that yes, for so long a lot of us straightened our hair to be more palatable, to get the job, right? So that to be able to be fully you and be successful in who you are and be strong in who you are with locks. That's what they were seeing. Yeah, they were seeing that. They were proud to see that. Yeah,
the whole thing of straightening your hair to be, especially in that job, right? Like to be in politics, then my hair best be straight. But I've decided that I'm going to take that to the bank. So I always make sure I wrap my hair. I also put medicine in my hair. Listen, y'all, black folks are crafty, right? I'm walking into the belly of the beast. It's the space that literally things that hurt our people. I put medicine up in my hair. They can't.
Good for you.
Right? And then we tie it up.
Well,
I don't want it to get in there.
I didn't even know about this medicine in the hair, but we need to talk because lots of stuff can stay in this hair. So,
but if you were to click on Via Rail, and you were to look on Via Rail, and there's like an icon of somebody sitting in the mask, it's like a drawn picture. Then you look at it says buy tickets, and you click on that icon, it says buy tickets, and first there'll be a male and a man and a woman sitting. And if you swipe the next picture over, there's a young woman and then a soul brother and somebody else, and they're all smiling. And the young woman on the left with the big hair is my daughter. So, and I've impressed upon her that, to be the face of travel, to be the face of pleasure, travel. When your grandfather's friend, Dr. Searles, was a porter on the train when he came from Barbados. This is huge.
It is.
I said, when I was in Montreal and we were all hired, working at Molson's as temp people, and you look down the line of people, look down the line of everybody packing boxes, and they were all black, and I was amongst them. And that, the guy pressing the button was white, and we're all hired at the same time. So for that same daughter now last summer, 2 summers ago, to be in a commercial, a Molson commercial, selling
being
light
able
beer,
to enjoy that trouble. Yeah.
So I said, you have no idea. In that sense, what kind of progress? That's my daughter.
You found it?
Yes, I did. You told me presentation. I was all up to be a
There's
rail.
no bigger promoter of my daughter than me. Nobody.
Yes.
Anyways, but
Yeah.
No, so that it does get to hair, right? Because my sister, my mother braided my sister's hair, and she would squirm and complain and whine. And I'd say, "Shut up! I'm trying to watch TV." And so, don't be like that to your sister. It's like, well, I didn't want her, anyways. So, but my three daughters, their mother didn't know how to do their hair, right? Their mother was white. I didn't, and so my youngest daughter went to. There's a lady in Montreal that does hair. I mean, other ladies too, but I mean, and it's the bigger picture hair, like we've talked about, the racialization of hair and beauty, and I told them, I didn't know, because B, when I was a little boy, obviously I wasn't braiding my sister's hair. It was my mother's job. And I had no idea that your mother wasn't equipped. How's that term? So not bad, huh? Pretty diplomatic.
That was pretty smooth.
I could go
Well done
places
there.
if I
Well
wanted to. Thank you. So no, for sure. I mean, I hear you. Even though I don't have any hair.
The hair thing too brings us right back into education, because
Yes.
how many stories have we heard? Like, just when you thought that multiculturalism had taken racism right out of the schools, right? Then you hear about a kid coming with the Afro puffs and being told that they need to keep their hair contained and all of this kind of stuff. Like, this is what's happening to our kids when they enter into the system.
Yes.
What is that?
Yeah, braids are not good enough. That it's not professional.
Yep.
Of course, if it's in a movie with blonde looks, that's professional enough. But on us, where it originated, it's not professional enough, and it's a constant battle. It's almost like being at war, and it's coming at you all the time, and you're deflecting, and you're bobbing and weaving and doing all these things just to sort of keep yourself straight and standing, and it's one of those things. Even at work, I agree with you, Shelley. I love to change my hair. It's different all the time, whether it's braids or whatever it is. It's just different. And people, can I touch it? No. Do I know you? So there is just this weird thing that
I have never wanted to go up into somebody's hair. I don't know.
I've been in hairstyling, so I kind of like that idea, but of like, let me touch it, like to see how dry it is, or like people have touched it from a professional thing, but I would never walk up to a stranger
I've never walked up to anybody and said, hey, what about that hair? Can I touch it? Never.
Well, half the time they don't. It's already your hand. You feel it, and then they ask. I'm like, I would.
You touch my hair. I'm like, can I touch? And you're like, well, you're already touching.
You're already touching, right?
The only thing that saved us is COVID. They're not touching us anymore.
Another thing I would argue is
benefits of COVID.
Speaking of COVID and Black Lives Matter, I think the reality also is that you've had a huge surge in population sitting at home watching newsfeed. If there hadn't been people sitting at home watching newsfeed,
we wouldn't have this.
George Floyd and the guy that got shot jogging, and it on and on and on and on and on would have just been, oh well,
confetti.
He must have been doing something wrong. Oh well.
You're so right. COVID is almost like that two-edged sword. It gave us an opportunity for individuals who are either allies or not. Almost like it's like the scales came off their eyes. It's because they were standing still long enough not to see that picture fly by like this, right? It wasn't moving at that speed. They were slowed down enough to be able to say, what is going on? And I think COVID has impacted us in so many ways. And this is one of the opportunities for us, is that it has given visibility to what was always there. It's not that it wasn't there, but it was almost like opaque. And COVID has done that.
I also think that COVID has created an opportunity where we have to rebuild. So by forcing us to rebuild, it would be a mess.
Looking at all the system.
Right?
We're here already.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I made sure to put myself on the Finance and Economic Recovery Committee. So we did like hundreds of hearings, hundreds of hours of hearings to try and figure out how to rebuild the economy post-COVID, right? And we're supposed to be looking forward, and we had different people coming in talking about from different sectors, etc. And I made sure that every time there was a hearing date, to send that information out, like we were posting it on social media, trying to make sure that people knew that they could find a way to come to plug into the system. Because if the government's going to rebuild, we best be centered inside that rebuilding. It's an opportunity.
Absolutely.
We need to be there.
Absolutely.
It is imperative. It's
COVID
imperative.
also elevated or showcased the fissures in our system, right?
Yeah.
So if we look at healthcare, for example, which I work in that area, and it's a area that I have a huge passion for, is the disparities in access to healthcare, the disparities in just being well from a Black people perspective. We're impacted in such a different and more significant way, along with other racialized communities than the white community. And COVID made that quite clear. We could have done all the reports in the world, because we've seen that with police, reports after reports after reports after reports. Yet it's almost as if nobody believed it. Nobody believed. But with COVID, what happened is it pushed it out there, and there is that in your face type of thing that we do need to leverage and take advantage of, and say, we're here, we're not going anywhere.
Absolutely.
I also think we can take advantage of the solidarity movements that are happening around all of the BLM stuff. So like, I know that in Kitchener, we had nearly 20,000 people that showed up in the middle of the pandemic for our BLM march here, which was wild. Like it was wild, and people, like, it was live streamed, so people online, etc. But one of the things that I keep reminding people about is that like marching isn't enough, right?
No.
Marching isn't enough. But if you came out to march during a pandemic, then you can sit at home and write me a letter.
Yeah.
And so, like, write a letter to the politicians, and what happened, at least during this march or this solidarity rally, the majority of the people that wrote to my office actually started off their letters saying, "I'm not Black. I'm not
allies, right? Those allies.
Because they had time, because everything was shut down, right?
So they had to educate, and they were like, "Hold on!" And they started reading more, and this doesn't make sense. And our allies is the movement. That really is the movement. Because we know that we can't do anything without them, right? Sorry. We know that even with the civil rights movement and with the Underground Railroad, like we need our allies to move forward. Like if we don't have them, then we cannot. Like we need our PECAs, right? We need our people who are gonna create the platform for us to share our stories and tell our truths, and allow the community to engage with us and recognize that we're people, we're moms, we're dads, we're like sisters and brothers, and we are your coworkers, and we are the people who are creating and building your communities, and we just need your help. We just need you to just stand with us, and and just give us a chance, right?
And allies give us the space to take a breath. So I had I've had situations online where people will like, they're well-meaning, they're asking me for books that they can read or whatever, like all sorts of stuff, that it's all important. But I had literally just posted something online and said how exhausted I am of the level of racism and the lack of attention, etc. And so then somebody had said, I want to read more, and I'd like to teach stuff to my kids, and what can I do? And before I even had to think about answering, there was a white counselor in town who went online and said, hey, Laura May is a Black woman doing this work. And sorry, my son is with me. She's a Black woman doing this work. She's exhausted. So let me tell you what I've been reading. And then she went and put a whole bunch of stuff. I was like, and then I made sure to like promote that. That's what allyship looks like. I could read. I could just take a break.
And it's one of the things we talked about was the fact that Martin Luther King could give his speech today, you know, and he would still be having that dream. He still would be, I have a dream. And when you look at the marches from when Martin Luther King was marching and all of the individuals that marched with Martin Luther King, the difference between then and what we're seeing now with Black Lives Matter are the allies. There are just as many allies, if not more allies sometimes, marching along with Black people. That was not the case as much when Martin Luther King was marching and saying his speech. And those allies are the ones that can help to educate, help to inform, help to influence, help to push the system, help to challenge the system, and help, you know, keep the momentum. Because what happens after COVID's gone, everybody? What happens when life goes back to being the norm? Then what's going to happen is this is going to be pushed to the side, and you know, it's going to be seen as it was then. Now it's now. We're moving forward, so we need to continue to make sure that that doesn't happen.
That's
This has been,
interesting.
yeah. Sorry, go, Michael.
Well, I was going to say, I think I related this story before. You know, after you know, George Floyd was murdered, I just asked myself, you know, other than, you know, going to the streets and like doing business, what could I do? So I always thought about Attawapiskat, and I've heard about that for a lifetime. So I called Attawapiskat, and I got a hold of a guy named Doug Kaboki, who was the town manager. And I said to him, you know, so like, and he was very direct. What do you want? Like, what do you hope to accomplish? I said, look, you know, if a guy from Barrie is calling you to offer to help in any way, obviously the system is messed up, because I shouldn't be calling you. Like there's like a million layers of bureaucrats and technicians and scientists and like.
Hey, Michael, not everybody might know where Attawapiskat is or what the situation is there.
It's just up north, and it was the water has always been First Nations has always been of bad quality for. So they have two water stations they can collect their water from, right? But they can't drink it out of the tap, and that's not foreign to many other First Nations communities. And so, you know, we exchanged emails. I asked him, what can I do? What could I do? He says, do anything. So I don't know what that meant. So I called my MP and I left him a message. I said, you know, it's Michael Mings, you know, the famous Michael Mings. Give me a call when you can. I got some questions regarding Attawapiskat. So I get a phone call. It's his assistant. And so he's, you know, I just want to, you know, brief, you know, Mr. Broussard before we talk, and so we can talk. And so he went on the spiel about how it's the system and he's in opposition and the Liberals haven't done this. And I said, that's nice, all nice and good. But I'm asking you, what is he doing to help us alleviate this situation? Because I can tell you one thing, if he turned on his tap and he couldn't drink water, that would change pretty quick.
Pretty damn
so long story short, he kept talking. I kept saying the same thing. And eventually I said to him, look, you know, it's nice talking to you. I like to talk. I'm a talker. But I didn't call you. I called the MP. Have the MP give me a call. Crickets. So that kind of shares that sense of institutionalism that is never ending, right? Because as long as I'm not I'm not going to get into politics, but as long as I'm not a donor to the Conservative Party, right?
I'm going to get into politics.
then he has no reason to call me back, right? And you know, conversely, I worked on a dam in just south of James Bay about 7 years ago. Was there for like, you go up for 3 weeks, fly in. It was there were 5 dams being built, and there was a agreement with the Cree people, and a lot of them, I was working with a lot of them, and I heard not a lot, but the ones, Dave, that I worked with, I heard all of his stories, and blow the mind, right? And but conversely, when I was up there, we flew up there. We're all in this. It was February, and it's almost like hockey. You throw sticks in the middle, and people choose the sticks. They throw the sticks on each side. So they're picking guys for the crews. We're all carpenters, right? And there was myself, a fellow with locks, a fellow Peter from, I don't know if you're Chinese. It doesn't matter. He's Canadian, right? And it was the three of us. The three of us were left. Everybody else was picked on a team, and they all went to work, and we just waited. And the first break came. What are you doing here, Mike? I don't know. Still waiting. And then by noon, we were chosen. Right? So if you're telling me that was a coincidence, I'm telling you, truly, you must be, well, hopefully you can break that naivete and grow up. But so
we're hopeful.
Huh?
Yeah.
But we're hopeful.
Well, I don't want to. I'm tired. I'm done with being hopeful.
Well, we have
Oh
to,
no, we
we
can't.
have
That can't be how we go on. We can't end with that. We got to end with we are hopeful because we have to be hopeful. We have
yes.
to.
We are
have
by
to.
nature. It is human spirit to be hopeful, right? But you must be clear-sighted.
That's
and
right.
Sometimes
Hopeful,
you
but we
have
goals, right?
You have to build your own table. You build your own table, and those that come to the table, either you invite them or they come because they have reflected and they've read and they have a sense of empathy.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have those things, anyways, I'm done. Go ahead.
I'm keeping an eye on the clock, and our producer is telling us we should wrap it up. But I think Laura May is right. We should end on one more question, the last question that we all decided on, and that is what gives you hope, and what are your goals for the short and long term? So maybe everyone, if you want to take a turn at this, and then we'll wrap it up.
I'm hopeful, honestly, because I think as a people, it's one of those things that can help to sustain us. We have to be hopeful. We cannot be not hopeful. So I'm hopeful that we will continue to, as I say, put up your elbows and demand the room that we deserve within our communities, within our systems. And not only am I hopeful, because you can't have hope without a goal. My goal is to hold those with authority accountable, and hold them to creating systems and community spaces and structures that are inclusive, that recognize the contribution that we bring as a people to the conversation, to the economic development, to the education, the furthering of our community. I think for me, that's where my hope is, and that's what my goals are.
I think for me, I can say that I don't know. I think what the difference was this year for me is it wasn't necessarily the hopeful year. It was the actionable year, right?
Yeah.
Like people were finally not just being hopeful, they were taking action, and for somebody who is, like I am, that's what I do. Like I build that table, and I said, okay, here we are. Let's go, come. We need help. Where's our allies? Let's build, let's grow. Like that's what speaks to me. And for the first time, I've felt like I've had like support, in that, where before it was always challenged. It's like, oh yes, now we should start. Oh, what can I help? Where people would tell me before, oh, we don't need to start something like that, or we don't need to do that, or we just not reinvent the wheel, and this system's in place. But it wasn't in place for people like me. It wasn't in place for a lot of people, in my experiences. So it wasn't there. So this, it's more than hope. It's action. It's action, and that, so I am ready to take action, and I'm finally feeling supported by that. And I'm just hoping that we can continue. And for me, 2020 has been one of those years that I couldn't wait to end, and I never wanted to finish. Yeah. Because I'm terrified if when everything goes back to normal, what that means for us.
Yes.
Michael?
Well, yes, I mean it's a human spirit to be hopeful. When I was a young man, I played on a soccer team in Barrie and found my way on the bench all the time. And I wasn't that bad. Actually, I wasn't that bad. I was okay. I was okay. And so I said to the guy, I said, I'm paying money to play in this league. Oh, I'm the coach. So I created my own team. I was living in Angus. We had our own team. I started this team, and before every game, I would tell them that the lineup is always the same. I'm playing middle back, and the rest of you can fight amongst yourselves. I started this team so I can play. So this is what this is all about. And we had a great time. Lots of laughs. We won some. We lost some. But the point is, what I learned from that experience is that if I wanted to play, it was up to me to create an environment, i.e. me starting a team, to make it happen. And so I think the days of being at the table are done. I think it's time to create your own table.
Put those elbows up.
Huh?
Put those elbows up, absolutely.
Yeah. But it's to be accountable, but to no one but yourself and your ethics and the purity of your spirit. There you go. That's my.
That was very hopeful. That was very
absolutely
hopeful.
right.
That was awesome. Do I get to be hopeful?
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm going in. I am hopeful because I do find myself unplanned being at the table, the traditional table of power. And I'm hopeful because my commitment to my kids and to my community and to my elders is to use my positions of power and privilege to have these conversations. I'm hopeful because I'm seeing a shift in what we're even talking about at Queen's Park. It's a traditional table that never used to talk about Black folks, but we talk about Black communities. It's a traditional table that used to celebrate multiculturalism, right? Like that was sufficient. And we are not allowing it to be that. And so there's hope in seeing things shift. But what I'm also hopeful for is that I know theoretically that change will never be sustained if community outside doesn't keep up the pressure, and community isn't letting up. So I won't let up. And so for that, I'm hopeful.
Yes.
Thank you.
Nice.
Hey, I wish we could go on and on. There's so much good stuff to talk about. This has been this is probably the best town hall we've hosted here, and we've hosted a number this year. So I'd like to thank everyone tonight for joining in and reading the comments. I can see that people thought that this was a very informative and enlightening and heartfelt and a hopeful discussion. So on behalf of all the viewers, I'd like to thank you, Michael, for joining us. For Laura May, I'd like to thank you on behalf of everyone. Claudine, thank you for taking time to join us. Shelley, thank you for moderating our discussion and joining us. And perhaps we can have round 2 in the new year. So thank you once again. And everyone watching, this has been recorded and I will be posting this. And Shelley, Claudine, Michael, Laura May, if you want to post it yourself, I will send you a copy of the discussion tonight. So thanks, everyone. I hope you have a beautiful
weekend. Thank you, everybody.
weekend.
Thanks for tuning in.
Bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.